Good evening, UK Crime Book Club. I'm Sheila Bugler, and I'm a crime writer and a member of this lovely book group. And welcome to our very first author chat special. So I had the luck of being asked to choose whichever author I wanted to interview for this special, and I chose Chris Whitaker, who's the other person on the screen here. And the reason I chose Chris is because I discovered his amazing books this year, and he's just a brilliant crime writer, and I love his work. So welcome, Chris, to the UK Crime Book Club, to our first ever author chat special.
Thank you for choosing me. I'm honoured. I've got a book. Just
we have to keep showing covers of our books, don't we? Because Sam told us that means more books sell later. So we just keep doing this randomly throughout the interview if nobody minds.
Well, she said she'd sell 1 million copies each.
Oh yeah, we're going to hide our faces the whole way through and just show books, random books. Okay, Chris, I would like to start by asking you just to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about sort of who you are and the books that you've written.
I am Chris Whitaker, obviously. My newest book is We Begin at the End. I'm going to show it again so you go and buy it. I also wrote Tall Oaks, I think like 6-7 years ago now, which makes me sound I feel really old actually when do you do that?
Well, I feel really old because, well, first of all, I am really old, but secondly, because I think when you start writing, you think it's going to happen really quickly, but it did happen quite quickly for you, didn't it?
It did, in that I got an agent fairly quickly. You know, I didn't know anything about it, so I quit my city job, wrote Tall Oaks, and then didn't know that you needed an agent, didn't know how it worked, you know, publishing and things like that, and kind of just sent out the letter saying, you know, I didn't really have anything to put on it, because, you know, normally in the letter you kind of boast a bit about your background, what you know, writing courses you've done, things like that, and I kind of had nothing, and it was kind of just, this is my book, I hope you like it. And thankfully a few agents did like it, and then I signed with my agent, so that part felt fairly painless, but then the rest of it has been painful, so it hasn't been that easy.
It is, isn't it? Because I was the same. I got an agent really quickly, and I was like out, you know, drinking champagne going, this is amazing, my life is going to change. But actually it hasn't changed really, because I'm still doing a day job alongside writing. And I write really quickly, so I've written loads and loads of stuff that's never got published. It's just sitting around sort of waiting for me to work on it sometime.
Yeah, I've got one unpublished practice book in my desk drawer, which we moved house not that long ago, and I found it, and it's so bad. It is like the worst book anyone has ever written. It was I think I was just getting every cliche out of my system.
So was the practice book written before Tall Oaks?
Yeah, it was before that. It was kind of, well, it's not even a book really, it's like a collection of kind of mishmash of scenes that don't fit together, and I called it a book at the time, and I made my wife read it, which was like torturous, and then I could see like she was panicking afterwards because I'd quit my job to become a writer.
Oh my god!
Yeah, and I could see what she was thinking. You know, like, this is a massive mistake.
Amazing. Does she still read your stuff then?
Pardon?
Does she still read your stuff?
Yeah, kind of reluctantly. She does. No, she does. She's you know, when people close to you like are very critical because they think that's what you want to hear, you know, like I'm going to be impartial, but really I just want to be told that I'm really good, I'm really brilliant, and it's a brilliant book. But no, she doesn't do that, sadly. She does read it all.
Because my husband used to read my stuff, but I couldn't cope, because my husband's lovely, but he's also really honest and capable of not being honest, and he would always pick up all the bad stuff, and it got to the point where I just really, I won't say hate, but almost hated him for it, so I just don't let him read anything anymore, and I think we're both really relieved.
Yeah, I can relate to that. I suppose it's quite difficult, isn't it, for a partner when they're reading it, because like my wife wouldn't necessarily read the kind of books I write, but
yeah, exactly, my husband neither.
And it's subjective, isn't it? And I love that about writing. I love that about books. You know, you can get a brilliant review on the same day you get the worst review you've ever had, and it keeps it interesting, I think.
No, it definitely does. Yeah. Now I know that Chris, you want to mainly talk about We Begin at the End this evening, which is like my absolute top book of 2020. I absolutely loved it.
Thanks.
But I'm just really curious, with Tall Oaks, that was the first book that you wrote that got published. So what was the kind of starting point? How did you kind of find your way into that novel?
Into Tall Oaks, it's strange actually, because Tall Oaks opens with a scene where a woman, Jess, is looking at the video monitor of her son, who's sleeping a few floors below, and she sees what she thinks is a clown in this room, which is like this terrifying thing, and she it's her eyes playing tricks on her. She can't get her head around it, and then she kind of runs downstairs, and her son is gone. And that came from we were living in this converted warehouse at the time, and my son was sleeping in the basement bit of it, I think it was about 4 or 5 floors below us, and we had a video monitor, and I saw something. It looked like a man in the corner of the room. Yeah, so instead of running down to save him, I just watched it for ages because I was terrified. And I eventually went down, and it was one of his giant cuddly toys, which my wife had put into a different place, but it was kind of terrifying in it. And that became that strand of that book, a missing child, because I thought about what might have happened, had it been real. And but I didn't. I set out just to write a book about a town. I was going to write this book about this town 3 months after an abduction. So kind of the shock is wearing off, and people are forced to kind of go back to their normal lives. And that was what I found really interesting. And then they've all got secrets, and they're kind of all linked in some way to this missing child. But because it's about a town, there's a lot of different characters, and there's a lot of different stories within it, so it's not a standard crime book. It's there's a couple with marriage problems, there's a boy who's struggling because his dad's walked out on the family, and from there it just became but I just really enjoyed it. Actually, I really enjoyed writing it. It was fun.
Well, it was the first book of yours that I read, and I really did love it. And I just want to say, I don't know if you can see, Chris, we're getting loads of questions coming up through the Facebook group, which I promise you will get all of your questions in a minute. And we spoke about this briefly when we spoke during the week, but one of the things that really strikes me about your writing is the beautiful, beautiful sense of place, and how you really, it's almost, it's like almost a love note, I think, to America, the way your sense of place is so beautiful. And I think for a lot of crime writers, location and that sense of place is really important. But I've been thinking about this since we spoke, because for me, location is really important, but I am almost pathologically incapable of writing about locations that I'm not living in at the time I write. Whereas it's almost the opposite for you, isn't it?
It is the complete opposite, yeah. It's the same when I'm a reader. I don't generally like a book set in London or somewhere I know very well. I like to escape a bit, and the same happened with Tall Oaks when I was writing that. The second book, All the Wicked Girls, I started writing, and I started the first draft of that. Probably half the book was set in on the coast in the UK, and it just didn't work, and it didn't feel right, and I just couldn't. I really struggled with writing it. So I said to my editor at the time, I said, I need to move it to Alabama in the US. I just read, yeah, and then there was like, yeah, I don't think he was that impressed with that idea, because I thought I could just tweak it, but no, it had to all be deleted, and then the whole thing had to be written again. But I spend a lot of time researching, and I make up the town, which helps, but I kind of plonk it down somewhere real, so it will be surrounded by places that I need to get right. But the town itself I can create, and I can put roads and houses where I want them to be. But yeah, I'm glad you said that, though, because it's something that's really important to me. I need, when you're reading the book, I need you to feel like you are there. It's really important to me.
You completely do. And I guess the big advantage about whether it's deliberate or not setting your novels in America, because it's a vast country, you can create fictional towns, can't you? And kind of get away with it.
Yeah, as soon as I kind of set the book there and started writing there, I found no constraints at all, kind of, like my imagination. It was very freeing, and Duchess in the book, and We Begin at the End, goes on, she kind of goes on this massive road trip, and she's really small, physically she's small, she's a young girl, and she's kind of really, she looks like she's not strong, kind of, and she is really strong, but and she's backdropped by Montana, which is, you know, this vast expanse of sky and trees, and it was just really powerful. That, and I really enjoyed writing those scenes, you know, when she goes to Montana.
And doesn't James have you read James Lee Burke? Because he has a whole series based in Montana, doesn't he?
Yeah, only one. I think it was Wayfaring Stranger a long time ago.
Yeah, no, because I just really that kind of the way he describes Montana, I've never been there, but it was very similar to, you created that same sense of place of, you know, of that kind of those big open skies and that amazingly kind of vast landscape. And actually, just looking at the questions now, Caroline has asked, she says, M.W. Craven had We Begin at the End as his book of the year. Should we all be reading it?
Probably.
Would you like me?
Because you should listen to Mike Craven, because he knows what he's talking about. Yeah, I love Mike. He has been so incredibly supportive of all my books, really, and he's a brilliant author, you know. Tilly and Poe, his series is just absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, they're so good, aren't they? They're brilliant, yeah.
Yeah,
and I think that's one.
I find it hard to tell people to read my books, you know, and why they should, and I suppose it's, you know, I could give you a long kind of pitch of the book, and I could tell you it took years to write, and it was, you know, which it did, and it was, you know, you get your money's worth when you buy the book. But I think it's quite broad, isn't it? Because they pitch it as crime fiction, but I think it's as much a coming of age story and a love story, and a story about families as it is anything else.
Well, I would say then I'm going to answer that question for you, Chris. It is absolutely beautifully written. Your style of writing is very lyrical. It's very poetic, and I think at the heart of that novel is that amazing character, Duchess Ray Radley, and I mean, she's just amazing, and I don't know if at some level she must be inspired by some of the great kind of protagonists, young protagonists of American fiction, not just crime fiction, but all fiction. Is that kind of true? Or maybe you're not even aware of that. I don't know. She's such a great, I mean, she's born to be on the screen, isn't she?
Yeah, I was less aware of it when I wrote the book. And then, you know, looking back on it and hearing people talk about it, there's a lot of comparisons, you know, really flattering comparisons to you know, To Kill a Mockingbird.
And actually, one of the questions that's just come up is, were you a big fan of To Kill a Mockingbird?
Yeah, but I read it when I was at school, and I need to reread it actually, because I don't remember an awful lot of it, but I remember being blown away at the time.
Yeah,
but it was I read it I think I was about 15 when I read it, which was horribly long ago now. But yeah, I get it with Duchess. I get I just loved writing her, but she was the reason the book took so long. You know, it was probably a solid year, just rewriting her dialogue and her scenes over and over until they felt right. And I don't know about you, but when you start writing, I don't generally know the characters as well as I do by the time I get to the end of the book, and then often they will have changed, so I'll have to go back and rewrite a lot of what they say and do, so that, you know, it marries up and it feels right. And that's a difficult process, isn't it? It takes time, and I've never found a quicker way of doing it. You just kind of grind it out over years.
It just drives me mad. So I have this conversation a lot with a friend of mine called Marion Todd. She's lovely and a really good writer, and she is a plotter, so she has the whole plot of her book worked out before she starts writing. And I've tried so hard, because instinctively it feels like a much more efficient way of writing a novel.
I'm sure
is to plot it first and write, but it just doesn't work for me. And so again, I am going through with my fourth book with the publisher I'm with at the moment, this painful last minute sort of rush to get it all done, because everything just changes when I write. And I think specifically, as you said, with the characters, that for me, I can only feel my characters when I start writing them.
Yeah, that's right. I used to worry about it, you know, I was going to ask you, because I can see one of the questions there says that you're a tutor, and I did my research before, and I wanted to ask you, because in theory, you should be really well placed to help me write the next book, because I always feel like I've missed out because I didn't do any creative writing courses, and I know a lot of authors that did, and I think you can get a lot from them.
I've never done a creative writing course, and actually, even though I am a tutor on a creative writing course, and I think I genuinely think what they do is that they can help people understand the nuts and bolts of writing and understand just really basic things like, show, don't tell, and all of that stuff, which I never did. I had to learn as I was doing it.
Yeah.
And for me, the big danger with creative writing courses is that it can, I have a really good writer friend who's probably watching this now, Sarah, and she's really, really talented, but she keeps doing creative writing courses to put off actually sitting down and writing her book.
Okay.
And I've known other writers like that, and I think they can be a great way of avoiding doing the really hard job of just sitting down and writing.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that makes me feel a bit better.
I don't know, did you ever read Stephen King's book on writing?
No, everyone keeps telling me to read it, and I'm worried that it might mess me up.
No, it won't mess you up. It's gorgeous. And the reason it won't mess you up is because when I read it, it's amazing because you just read it and you go, oh my God, yes. Yes, you're so right. And so everything, he talks about how he became a writer. You just read it, and so everything he talks about just feels so completely true. And he's not telling you how to write, really. He's just talking about what it's like to be a writer. And it's gorgeous because, as you know, this is such a lonely business most of the time. And actually, when writers get together, we don't really talk about writing, do we? We're going to talk about other stuff. Think. Exactly.
Have you been to?
Yeah, gorgeous. Yeah, no, of course, yeah, but we don't all sit around, because that would be really boring, wouldn't we? Be all.
It would, yeah.
Okay, I'm just looking at the questions now. We've got let's see, questions about my tutoring, which I think we've answered. Alexander James Hawley says, although I've not finished the book yet, you seem to have chosen 2 of your characters to have disabilities. What was the challenges in researching Parkinson's in particular?
I suppose I felt massive responsibility to get it right, and I always do whatever I'm writing about. When you're writing about something real that affects people like that, you have a responsibility to get it right. And I did a huge amount of research. I watched, met some people, watched some videos, endless videos actually. There's some really good stuff online that kind of follows people over years of their lives, and I wanted to get it right, and I wanted it to. So it's part of a character in the book, but it's not. I didn't want it to define him, because he is, a person that I would like to get to know, in real life. This character, and I didn't want to make him seem self-pitying in any way, and I wanted him to be entirely focused on his job and his place, and that those kind of things are slipping away from him because he's unwell, and it was just trying to get inside his head and how that must feel, and it was sad and kind of frightening and a difficult thing to write, and then something I kind of checked with the people that I had spoken to before, and I had some messages from people with Parkinson's, that said they really enjoyed it, and I got it right, and they're kind of the best messages that I've received.
And he's a gorgeous character as well, isn't he?
Yeah, he is, and he's one of the stars of the show, isn't he? He's
but he's kind of almost
if Duchess is front and center, he's very slightly off center, and I think that's because she is kind of domineering and strong, and his strength is kind of understated in the book. And
with I haven't read your second book. Is it the Wicked?
All
the Wicked Girls. But with Tall Oaks and with We Begin at the End, there is a common theme, isn't it? They're both about sort of little communities who've been really rocked by huge trauma and the impact of that of all the people living in those communities.
Yeah, I find it really interesting. I find there's something fascinating about small town America. I love Stephen King. And I hadn't seen Twin Peaks either before I wrote Tall Oaks, and then I went in and met with my agent. Yeah, I went in and met with my agent,
young.
and she said, "Oh, it's very Twin Peaks, isn't it?" And I said, "Yeah." And then I went and binge watched it and thought, "Yeah, it's a bit Twin Peaks actually." That
It's
was a
very
happy
Twin
coincidence. Yeah, but yeah, there's something. Well, there's just something fascinating, isn't there, about when you read about a big crime and how it, the ripple effect. That's what I'm kind of interested in. It's how it affects the people, not necessarily right in the centre, but can affect, even their neighbours or the people they bump into in the street, and the policemen that have to work the case and then try and leave it behind and go home, and they work these terrible, like Tall Oaks in particular, the policeman in it is Jim, and he's never had a case like that. It's a small town. All of a sudden he's got this missing child and he can't solve it, and he just feels they bring in, police from out of the town to help him, and he just feels like a total failure, and that's why it becomes kind of an obsession for him. Yeah.
Do you know, it's really interesting as you're talking, and I had no idea I was going to talk about this tonight, but a few years ago, in Ireland, I had a cousin who disappeared really tragically, and he was eventually found. He was dead, but it was really weird. I went back to his funeral with another cousin of mine living in a different part of England, and at the funeral, I've been out of Ireland since 1989, so forever, and lived in London, lived all over the world. But going back to that relatively small town for that funeral, and that sense of community, and that sense of like everyone in this small town being affected by tragedy, we sat there kind of apart from our own, sadness, just that real sense that you just don't get in cities, I don't think, that sense of just a whole group of people deeply affected by something. It really, it was such a thing. I remember, is and again,
I'm really sorry to hear that. I can't imagine how difficult that was.
Anyway, that's sorry, but you do that really well. I think you capture the impact that has on small communities where everyone feels personally affected by something.
Thank you. I live in quite a small town, although it's like right on the edge of London. There is like a real community feel, and I love it. It's you kind of know a lot. Everyone is really friendly, which I love.
Yeah. I always remember when I used to drop my children to primary school, just looking at all the different people dropping the kids off. And I did always used to think, in this one primary school, all of life is here. There's people dropping their kids off there, everything, all the different stories people have, it's all here in this one tiny little primary school community. You don't have to ever go beyond that if you don't want to.
Yeah. I'll have to ask. Yeah. My wife does the school run a lot more than me.
Ask her,
I do love it. I know exactly what you mean. And there's a lot of books, actually. There's been a few books written about that sort of setting. Rebecca Thornton wrote one. Yeah. But that's kind of more like the toxic school playground.
Which has never been my experience, I must say, at the school.
Yeah.
And now we've got more questions, Chris. So one person has asked, we don't have a name, it says, you write extraordinarily believable women characters. What's your secret?
That's really flattering for one, and a really difficult question to answer. I don't know. It's I never dwell on it. People talk about writing American characters, writing characters of a different race, different gender, different sexuality, things like that. It's never something that I'm conscious of when I'm writing. Like, I don't try and slant the writing in any way or anything like that. I just write the character based on their characteristics and their traits and their feelings and personality and things like that. And I guess that maybe is the secret, and maybe that's why it works. So I won't sit down and think, right, this is a woman. How does she think? How is that different from this character who's a man? I'm more likely to think, what's her background? What was her childhood like? What does she do for a living? Things like that. What might her views be, politically or something like that? And those sort of things help shape the character that I'm writing, rather than their gender or anything else. How do you find that? How do you find writing men?
The same, really. I don't, because I think you just think about the person, don't you? And you think about exactly the same, who they are. But I don't I've never thought I'm writing about a man, so I have to do this differently. And I guess that's just part of being a writer. I think you just you're always imagining what people are, and it's all about what their motivations are. You know, the things, what really interests me always, I think, being a mother is what are the things that shape how someone becomes being an adult? And I'm always not vaguely, kind of really interested when I meet really well-rounded young people. I always think, God, your parents did a great job. How can I do the same for my kids?
Yeah.
And I'm also, I think the other thing that has always really fascinated me is how the long-term effect of not getting that right is kind of an obsession of mine, because I am a parent, and I didn't realize until I had my own kids how, that love isn't enough. The loving is the easy bit of being a parent, but it's all the other stuff. It's like trying to just do it right and not mess up. I'm slightly obsessed with that, I think.
No, I know what you mean, and I always think that a big part of being a parent is just guilt all the time.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, I kind of mess up all the time, or I'm not around as much as I want to be, and then I might spoil them because of that, and then that backfires, and then it's like it's just a constant battle, isn't it? It's just really difficult, but it's another thing that I wonder if we shouldn't dwell on it. What makes you a good parent, and I think.
Oh yeah, I think you shouldn't overdwell on this. I do, to my detriment. My husband doesn't. He's much more well-adjusted than I am when it comes to things like that. And now I've got more questions here. Now, this is for you, Chris. Have you ever considered collaborating with another author, and who would you like as your writing partner?
That's a brilliant question. I've never, and I don't think I ever could. I'm a total control freak. Probably Cormac McCarthy.
Oh wow, yeah.
Just so I could sit back and watch and let him do all the work, and then we'd end up with like a beautiful masterpiece of a book. But no, I don't know how it works. Do you?
No, I'd absolutely hate it. I would never ever do it. I'm just saying that now, never. It would completely. It's not me in any way. I'd hate it.
Yeah, but a lot of people do it, and it works really well, doesn't it?
I suspect it works well for people like Marion, who I just spoke about, who are really good at plotting in advance. But maybe that's something you can learn. I don't know. But no, I would just hate it. It's kind of the opposite of what being a writer is for me.
But if you had to, who would you pick?
No, joking. Oh, I would pick. I would pick Megan Abbott, who's probably my all-time favorite writer, crime writer. I adore her. Have you read her stuff?
Yeah.
I love her. And she's just a joy. And what I really love is that my daughter is 14. And we recently watched the Netflix adaptation of Dare Me on TV. And I have now converted my daughter to Megan Abbott, which makes me feel very proud.
Well done. We've just started watching The Undoing. Have you seen that?
Oh, it's brilliant. It's amazing. It's amazing.
We've only seen the first episode, but it is really, there's some beautiful shots in it as well. I appreciate things like that. Yeah, I really.
Well, what's
really
gorgeous about it is, without giving anything away, it's just really clever without any unnecessary kind of silly plot twists, or it's just really well done. So you're in for a real treat. Yeah,
it's just we've got a 5-month-old though, and she never lets us watch anything or do anything that doesn't involve her. So the level of selfishness that I haven't encountered.
Shocking, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's shocking.
Yeah.
Now listen, there's 2 more questions here that I want to ask you. So one is, if you were given a choice, what song or piece of music would you have for the theme tune, presumably of the amazing film adaptation of We Begin at the End, which is going to happen, or maybe a TV series? Anyway, what would be the theme tune?
Bridge Over Troubled Water is a song that features in the book heavily, because Duchess's mum's used to sing it, or sang it to her, and there's a part where Duchess sings it toward the end of the book, and probably that. But
okay.
Do you find it's like beyond your wildest dreams?
Oh yeah, completely. Yeah. And I'm just completely of course it's beyond your wildest. So I have never got as far as thinking that about anything I've ever written. I think I'd be just so grateful if anyone ever wanted to film it. I'd be like, take the money and run. That would be probably me.
Put what you want on it. Yeah.
Exactly. Now we have two more questions. Let me see. Okay, so Caroline Maston has said, Sheila always has a jazzy headband. I love it. The reason for that is that Sheila is really, really rubbish at going to the hairdresser and get her haircut. Someone else has said, what a great chat. Thank you. And oh, hang on. Let's see. Abby Frost has asked a question. We'll find out. Now it says, I love this question. Do you both have a fixed writing routine? What's your favorite part of the writing process? Okay, Chris, you answer that first.
Okay. Writing routine. No. Well, I do. I set myself a target. I do. It will vary depending on when my deadline is, but a more broad kind of routine will just be that I have to write every day. If I'm writing a book, you know, and I haven't finished, I will write something every day, even if it's just a paragraph, or even if I'm just fixing yesterday's paragraph, I'll have to check in, you know, at least once a day. And then when I've finished and delivered, I allow myself a bit of a break. Yeah, and but for favorite part of the writing process, I love it so much. I really, it kind of drives me mad, and I find it incredibly difficult, but I also love it. I am probably sitting down with a blank page before you get going. I like that part, you know, when you're about to kind of go on this journey that might take 2 or 3 years, but then you get that at the end of it, and it makes it all seem worthwhile. And yeah, how about you?
I think I'm liking it less as I kind of progress with writing, but for a good reason, because I think I'm finding it harder. I'm pushing myself harder. And the bit I still love the most is with this book I'm writing at the moment, what I'm loving the most actually is the last run towards the finish line, when suddenly it's like magic that all the bits that haven't worked are coming together. And that's the bit I like. There is a magic to it for me, and it's just amazing. And it's like there's a thing inside me that has nothing to do with me, and but it's the most essential, necessary part of who I am. And I just love that. I also love, I didn't start writing till I was 40. And I had done like loads and loads and loads of different jobs before that, like loads of different things. I've done every job you can ever imagine.
What was the worst?
Oh God, selling double glazing. That was the worst job ever, over the phone in the late 80s. It was horrible. But when I started writing, I just realized quite early on that this was the thing. All these other jobs, what I'd been looking for was this. And actually, that was enough. Like, I kind of knew then, and I still feel a bit like this, that like it's great to be published, and there's definitely something about writing. We want people to read what we write, but actually for me the biggest joy in all of this is that kind of just realizing this is me, this is who I am, this is my little place in this big crazy world, and I'll never take that for granted. I feel amazingly lucky to be able to do this.
No, that's perfectly put, actually. I hadn't thought about it like that, but it is nice to kind of stop searching.
Yeah, and I definitely was big time, you know. So yeah, anyway, so that's now. I'm just going to be more questions. Okay, Alexander again. Hello, Alex. With We Begin at the End being an American book, what voice was in your head when you were writing it? As I've got an American narrator reading it to me on audiobook. How interesting.
Yeah, I don't, probably my voice. It's strange. I don't so much hear them as I do. I don't hear anything American, but I've listened to some of the audiobook, and it's brilliant. The narrator, just because that's such a difficult job, isn't it? Is it
a male narrator?
Is it what? Sorry?
Is it a male narrator?
It is. Yeah, it's George Newbern, and he was. Have you seen Father of the Bride?
Yes, of course I have.
Yeah, so it's I've forgotten his name in it, but he's the one that gets married to the daughter.
Oh my God, amazing.
He's Brian McKenzie, yeah. And he's in Friends as well. Yeah. So I thought that was really, really cool. And then I made my kids watch Father of the Bride.
Of course you did.
Pointing him out every time. Listen to his voice. It's so sulky, isn't it? Yeah, you've done a brilliant, absolutely brilliant job. You know, and to narrate Duchess, it's a tough job, and he absolutely nailed it. But I think that helps. I don't have a clear voice. It's like when people ask, if there was a film, who would play the characters. I don't have anyone, because they're so personal and they're so mine, and no, I don't put a voice onto them, or other than the voice you read in the book. How about you?
Oh, no voice, no, and like you, they're just completely personal. But also, just want this out there in case anyone's listening. I'm really happy for anyone who wants to buy the film rights to take it and use whatever voices you want. Really happy to go with that. But no, I never imagine what actor would play any of my characters. Nothing like that. Now, someone has asked, do you both have a favorite relationship that you've created? Okay, yeah.
You go first this time.
Okay, so I think, I'm just looking through my books. I think my favorite relationship, I'm going to say it, which is a real cop-out, is the relationship between the two detectives in my book that's coming out next year that still doesn't have a title and hasn't been published. But they are called Rachel and Addie. That's all I'll say, and they're lovely.
Okay, I look forward to reading it.
For you now.
My favorite, that's so difficult. Can I choose from each book? Is that cheating?
Yeah. No, it's not. Go on.
Tall
Oaks, much more answer than I'm giving, so keep going, please.
Tall Oaks would be Manny and Furat. Manny is
I love Manny. Oh my God, I forgot about Manny. Tell everyone about Manny. He's completely gorgeous.
He is a 17-year-old who his dad's left, and he kind of has issues with identity because he thinks it might have been his fault, and his dad didn't really like him. So he reinvents himself, and he lives in this affluent town of Tall Oaks in California, and he reinvents himself as a gangster, which is, that's his masculine role model, that he's projecting. And it sounds ridiculous, but he dresses like a gangster and wears a hat, and tries to shake down local businesses, which is as stupid as it sounds. When I say it sounds really stupid.
He's such a brilliant character, because you start off, when you meet him first, as a reader, you start thinking he's just a complete clown, and then gradually you completely fall in love with him.
Yeah,
and completely.
He's got some heart to him, because he can be. Yeah, he swears a lot, a hell of a lot in that.
My type of guy.
Yeah, and he and a girl moves in next door called Furat, and he tries his luck basically because he really fancies her, and that was a good relationship to write.
I also love the way Furat's mother she was such a great character, wasn't she? The way she just kind of let him be himself, and
and he calls her Al. Her surname's Al Basri, and he takes to calling her Al, like Al Capone, which luckily for him she finds funny. All the Wicked Girls would be, I know you haven't read it, but there's the star of the book is Noah, and his love interest is Rain, who has very little time for him. And it's just, that was a tough one to write, but I'll go to We Begin at the End, which is going to be impossible. Probably, I know, maybe Duchess and Hal, or Duchess and Thomas Noble.
Yeah.
They were both difficult to write. I think Duchess and Hal was really difficult to write, and you'll know when you read the book why. And Duchess and Thomas Noble was nicer, because Duchess kind of is abrasive, and some people don't like her. Some readers find her very difficult to like, which I quite like. And I quite like it because she is quite tough. She's quite, she can be hard to love. Because someone.
Oh God, I adore her.
Yeah, so Janine Cummins, who wrote American Dirt, she wrote that she wants to adopt Duchess, and someone read it recently and said, I can't think of any child I would leave to adopt Duchess, because she's an absolute nightmare. And at first I thought, oh God, that's so harsh, and then I quite liked it, because she kind of she earns it. I think she earns your love by the end of the book. But with Thomas Noble, she's had such a crap life, and Thomas Noble is, you get glimpses of the girl, you know, behind the act and the face and the outlaw kind of persona, and you get a glimpse at a 13-year-old girl, you know, who's going to her first prom, and it's bits like that that remind you of her age, you know, and that she's kind of an innocent victim in this story.
I thought the Duchess and Hal, which is of no relevance to anyone who hasn't read the book, but the Duchess and Hal relationship was so gorgeous and so just so deeply moving, really, was, you know. And
yeah, so Hal is, for anyone that hasn't read it, Hal is Duchess's grandfather. Yeah, and she is angry when she goes to stay with him, and she wants nothing to do with him, really, because he's had nothing to do with her for the first 13 years of her life. So he's an effective stranger, and he tries really hard to break down that wall, and she tries just as hard to keep it up.
It's gorgeous. Okay, another question for you, for both of us, actually. Do you both use a computer when you're doing your first draft, or do you prefer pen and paper?
Sheila?
I never use pen and paper. I'm a complete hook to my computer. So basically, I'm going to tell this story. I went to university in Galway in the west of Ireland, and I absolutely loved Galway, but all my friends were doing degrees that were 4 years long, degree. And I didn't want to leave at the end of my 3 years. First of all, because I had a boyfriend who was going to be there for another year, and all my friends were staying for another year. So I persuaded my parents that it would be a really good idea to let me do a 9-month secretarial course, which I did. And it was completely useless in every way, except I learned to touch type really, really quickly. And I'm convinced if I hadn't done that secretarial course, I wouldn't be writing today, because being a fast touch typer is the only way I am able to find the time to write. So I only use a computer. How about you?
Yeah, same. I've I will make some notes sometimes on a notepad, but most of the time I will be awake in the middle of the night making notes on my phone, because something will just click, or I'll think that I could have written that sentence slightly better. I could have changed this single word, and I'll get up at 3 o'clock in the morning and make the note on my phone so that I remember to change it in the morning. I can't imagine not working.
No,
I work across 3 screens. Like, I've got them in front of me now, 3 big screens, and because I like to put things around. Like if I'm writing a scene, I like to try and find a picture that looks roughly like the scene I'm writing, or a few pictures, and possibly what the characters are hearing might be playing, and I'll create kind of the scene like that. And it's an exhaustive way to do it, because you write a lot of scenes, but it works. You know, so far it's.
So you have 3 actual different screens, not one
3 big screens.
Is that because you're a trader and you're used to having
exactly right? Yeah, but now I can't. Like, I even tried writing on a laptop. I was staying at a hotel recently for a book thing, and took a laptop with me and found it really tough, which is annoying. Actually, I know it's really annoying. But yeah, I'm going to get better at that. That's one of my New Year's resolutions.
Oh no, you must get better at that, because otherwise you can't just live a life where you can only write with 3 massive screens in front of you.
I know, but then I generally have only ever written at home, you know, in front of my screens. I've never written anything anywhere else.
Wow. That's a good challenge for 2021 then, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Do you listen to music when you write?
Depends what the scene, not on the first draft, definitely not, but during an edit, you know, if I'm trying to get something right and the characters are in a bar or something, and I make reference to a song which will later get cut because I can't use song lyrics or something without a long legal form to fill in and load of headache, I'll play something. How about you? Is it silence?
No, God, no. I have my headphones on and I listen to music all the time. And actually, why not for the first? So for me, like, I think music's more important for the first draft than at any other stage during the process for me. It just, the 2 things go together, music and writing. No,
I'll get it will sidetrack me what I'm listening to, or a lyric might find its way onto the page.
Oh, how interesting.
I need silence. Yeah, and I have headphones on, noise cancelling ones, so I get silence. Because I think the first draft is kind of, you're just feeling it out. I used to spend way too much time on a first draft, you know, and now I've started to realise that the book, that, you know, the finished book bears no resemblance to the first draft. So I don't need to worry too much about it. And I'll start on chapter 2 normally as well, because there's too much pressure on the first chapter.
And also the first chapter for me, because I always start in the first chapter, but the first chapter when the book is published is never the first chapter in my first draft.
Okay.
So you're as well starting on the second chapter.
How do you do titles? Are you going to choose the title of the new book?
So I'm really annoyed at the moment. So I'm writing the fourth book of a 4-book deal at the moment. And the first 3 books, the title came really easily. And I'm really struggling with this title. So what I do for titles normally is just kind of do things like I go through loads of song lyrics, poems, just trying to find a phrase. How about you?
I don't generally name them because it gets changed. Or it gets suggested by sales and marketing and things like that. But with We Begin at the End, there's a kind of prologue bit at the start, and that I called that We Begin at the End.
Yeah.
And then my editor said, you know, because I'd referenced it a few times in the book, and my editor said, how about that as the title? And I hadn't thought of it as the actual book title, but now I love it. You know, it's such a perfect fit.
It is a perfect fit, and it's a brilliant title. But also, so actually, I need to stop worrying about this and just let someone else do the job of finding a title. Is that what you're basically telling me?
Basically, yes. Just let the sales team worry about it. They'll tell you what works.
It's a really good idea. Because with my first publisher, they always change my titles, which I never minded because I just think that's their job. Do you know what I mean? They know.
Yeah, same. That's what happened with the first 2 books. So I thought, I'm just going to name the prologue in this one, and then call it book 3 or whatever. And that's what I'll do when I start writing the new crime book.
So what are you writing at the moment?
I've just finished a teenage book. YA. That comes out next summer. That's called The Forevers, which is fun. So it's about an asteroid that's been coming towards Earth for 10 years. You know, giant. It sounds dystopian, but it's not at all. They just spotted a giant asteroid 10 years ago, and they keep trying to stop it, and it just keeps coming. And we're now down to the last summer on Earth. And you've got this group of teenagers who grew up in this coastal town in England, and they kind of pulled together, and it's their last summer, and it's kind of what would you do if you could get away with anything, you know, because there's no more consequences.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and it's kind of a bit of a love story and a bit of teens going wild. And
how old are they when you say teens? Like a 16?
They're 17.
Okay. So just on the cost of leaving home and.
Yeah, it's I enjoyed it actually. I needed, after We Begin at the End, I needed something different, and I'd had this idea for ages, and I met an editor at Hotkey, my publisher, my teenage publisher, and we really liked this idea, and I said, I think I can write it, I'm going to give it a go, and we kind of worked together on it. Yeah, and it's really beautiful actually, the proof. I think I've got one somewhere, not to hand, but I did tweet a picture of the other day. They just
let's take a look. So you say coastal whereabouts?
South Coast. It's not mentioned. It's a fictional town, of course, because that's what I'd make it up.
Oh my god, how exciting! Because you know I live on the South Coast, right? I live in Eastbourne.
I do. Yeah. So you can tell me what I've got wrong afterwards.
I will. Okay, we've got another question. Someone is saying, what books? Caroline Maston has said, "Oh, I love YA. I will definitely have to look out for that." And then someone has said, "What books are you currently reading? And do you have a favourite of the books you've read this year?" So I'm going to answer that first. I'm currently reading a book, and I can't remember who the author is, but it's called Black Widows. Have you heard of this one, Chris?
Yes, I have heard
about
of it.
Mormon wives.
Mm-hmm.
I can't. Can you remember the author?
No, not off the top. I think I might have a copy somewhere, actually.
So I don't think it's out yet. I'm reading an advanced copy of that. Yeah. And have you read it?
I haven't. No, not yet.
Brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. So it's called Black Widows. I'm sure if you Google it, whoever's watching this, you'll find the author. And it's about Mormon wives in Utah, just outside Salt Lake City. Their husband is killed, and the whole story is told from the perspective of the 3 different wives as we go through the book, trying to work out who killed the husband. I haven't got to the end yet, but it's fantastic. And I'm already predicting that's going to be one of the really big books of next year. And my favorite book of 2020 is We Begin at the End by the amazing Chris Whitaker.
Thank you very much. It's very nice. I'm reading, I've just started, let me find it. I'm reading The Cut by Chris Brookmeyer, and that comes out next year at some point. Gonna find out. I don't know when it comes out. They normally put it on the spine, don't they? It'll be out soon, and it's brilliant. I've only just started it. The favourite book of the year is so difficult. The Last House on Needless Street was it's spectacular. It's kind of a bit. It's beautiful, but it's a bit kind of horror. It's so hard to describe. It comes with a Stephen King quote attached to it. So yeah, weighty. But I've read loads. Mike Craven's just brilliant. You know, every book is better and better. The Curator was amazing. I read a book called 3/5 by John Bircher, which was amazing. It's hard. Difficult to choose.
It is difficult to choose. Do you know why you ended up writing crime fiction, Chris?
I didn't really. I never think of them as crime books. It's so funny, isn't it? And it's kind of, I wrote Tall Oaks and then I pitched it as a YA book when I was trying to get an agent, which is clearly not YA, just because Manny was at the centre of it. And kind of the first draft was even more, you know, his story.
Yeah.
And then I met my agent and editor and they kind of said, this is a crime book, you know, and then they made it more crime. And I love crime. I've always been a crime reader. How about you?
Well, I am mad about crime fiction. When I was young, I was very kind of precocious child, so I read lots of literary fiction very young, and really only kind of moved into crime fiction in my kind of 20s. And I always had this idea that I wanted to write, but just was a bit crap at sort of, you know, too busy doing other stuff, really. And then in my 30s, I think it was, I read, I started reading Harlan Coben, actually. He was my way into crime fiction. So it was in my 30s I started reading crime fiction. And I remember, he's not probably my preferred style of crime fiction now, but I remember reading his Myra and Bugler books and really vividly thinking, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. And that was really
his friend in that book. Is it Wynne?
Oh, he's the kind of martial arts guy.
Yeah, I love him. I really love that.
Yeah. They're great. I think those books are brilliant.
Yeah, you studied psychology.
I did study psychology,
and does that help with writing crime?
Loads of people ask me that, but I don't. I mean, look, I'm 52, and I left university when I was 20. You know, so I kind of I don't know how much I remember about studying psychology. I think what made me want to study psychology are the things that make me want to write crime fiction. Just that interest in what makes us all tick. That's the thing, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and just exploring all those kind of the grey parts of between the black and white of who we are, you know, that's the thing that really interests me.
Yeah.
But I think probably slightly differently to you. I think if you cut me open, you'd find kind of, I've no interest in writing any other type of fiction. I'm just, crime fiction is my thing, really.
Okay.
I've read anything other than crime fiction, and I'm just really kind of comfortable with that. You know, I just think this is who I am. Whereas I think your style is more literary, I think, and I can see why you don't think of yourself as a crime writer.
I do. Yeah, I do. I think I'm more a crime writer than anything else. I just see this book about the crime. I always find is the least interesting part of my books.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Isn't it always the least interesting? Like when I think of all the crime books that I've read that I really love and that I would recommend to people, I can never remember the detail of the crime or who did it or why they did it.
Yeah, you know? You're right. Yeah, you're right. You're exactly right. It's always about the character. You know, character is king. That's, you know, give me good writing and characters that I care about. And
exactly.
That is a brilliant book for me.
Exactly. Now I'm just looking, we've got more questions coming up. The 5 by Harlan Coben is one of the best things I've watched. I haven't seen that. Oh, and Samantha really sweetly said, I shouldn't read this out loud, but I do have to. You are never 52! And then someone,
you are never 52. No way.
No way is Sheila 52. There we go. This is great for my ego. Now, I think, Chris, we are at 4 minutes to 8, so I think we need to start winding this down. Do you want to wave your book in front of the screen again?
Absolutely.
Okay, so you wave your book and I'll talk about it. This is We Begin at the End by Chris Whitaker. It is absolutely 100% gorgeous. If you haven't read it, I urge you to go out and read it. It will make you cry. Chris, I don't know if I told you that. It is so moving. It just, gorgeous. And I'm going to hold up my latest book, When the Dead Speak, which is my second book in my D. Doran crime series. And the third one, I don't have a cover, is coming out on the 28th of January.
That's a great title. Did you choose that one?
This one?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, I did choose this one. Yeah, but actually I had this title knocking around in my head for years and I was just waiting for the right book to pin it onto, if that makes sense.
It does. You nailed it.
Thank you. Thank you. And Chris, how lovely, lovely, lovely to chat to you this evening.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun. It's been, I can't believe it's an hour already.
And hopefully maybe next year our paths will cross at some crime festival when we can all get back.
Yeah, when they release us.
I know.
I can't believe I'm in tier 4 now.
I know.
It seems a long way away from tier 1.
God, doesn't it? Yeah. Well, hopefully it won't go on for too long and let's all live in hope of being vaccinated next year.
Fingers crossed.
You take care, Chris. Thank you so much. Lovely, lovely to meet you and talk to you.
Thanks a lot. Thank you
to everyone out there for all your questions. Bye-bye.